Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast as we sort of move on the conversation here to the New York Knicks, who went out and re-signed forward OG Anunoby to a brand new contract extension, 5 years, $212.5 million. That will be an average annual value of $43.5 million. And there were definitely questions as to whether or not the Knicks would be able to bring, or not that they financially would be able to bring back Anunoby, but whether or not they would be willing to bring him back at a high price, considering the fact that they just traded for Mikal Bridges, who has a very similar skill set, I would say, being a forward who can have the ball in his hands, but really thrives off of being a supplementary scorer and can be an elite defender. And it definitely makes this Knicks lineup scary, especially if they are able to retain Isaiah Hartenstein. Outside of Jalen Brunson, you're talking about, probably your top 5-6 players outside of Brunson who are really good defenders, probably roll out there with a lineup of Brunson and then either Hart or DiVincenzo, and then have Anunoby, Bridges, and Hartenstein. I mean, that is a very talented group, especially considering the fact that Hartenstein, too, it's not like he's a shooter necessarily, that the Knicks are going to be able to entirely space out other teams, but Hartenstein is somebody who is a pretty good passer for a big, and obviously all of the work that he does on the offensive glass can be a difficult situation for other teams. So I love the idea, at least the concept, of what this roster is shaping out to be for next season. Now, it's going to be a very expensive group, and that's why when Knicks fans were disappointed by how the draft played out last night, where they go out and they get Dottier, who may not even play in America this upcoming season, could be a Euro stash so that he doesn't count against the salary cap. I don't really know what else they were expecting. Now, obviously, it's always fun to speculate about what a draft prospect could be, and we pay so much attention when the majority of guys don't pan out, especially when you get outside of the top 20 of the draft or so. But I still think that, the reality is nobody was going to really heavily be a part of what the Knicks are trying to be moving forward. And sure, I mean, there are a number of players that I think could slide in there. Kyle Filipowski could have gotten backup big minutes, been a little bit of insurance in case Hartenstein does walk in free agency, or going out and getting a Baylor Shireman who, defense is that what would have held him back from being a Thibodeau player? It's very possible, but has the spacing that I think the Knicks could definitely improve on. So for the Knicks here, I just don't think that there was a scenario where they were really going to stick and use both of those picks again, especially when you are sitting around watching the draft for a couple hours and you have multiple opportunities to get an impact guy, and you end up just trading for future assets. I think they ended up getting 5 second-round picks or so, including some in today's second round. But all in all, I thought that they played the draft right. It is what it is. It's a little bit less exciting than you would maybe want, but at the same time, the Knicks are going to be a good team regardless next year, regardless of picking somebody late in the first round. And, it does add to the question of they're going to be really good, but is this the version we are going to see? They can pay Hartenstein a contract. I think he's going to be able to get more in free agency, so we could very likely see one of these other teams. Again, I keep talking about the Western Conference, but I look at the Thunder, the Grizzlies, and the Pelicans all as teams that could definitely benefit from having another center option. Now, a couple of those teams have some young center options that I'm sure they would like to build around, but also expectations in terms of all of those teams are trying to throw their name into the ring of contenders. And as much as I like the upside of an Yves Missi for the Pelicans, or Zach Edey might actually be a solid player for the Grizzlies. All of them could use some more impactful day one guys, and Hartenstein, for a contract that they end up throwing at him, is probably going to give you that higher level production in the first few seasons of, while they are still developing. And again, I'm not saying it's perfect necessarily putting Edey on a developmental path, but just feel like it couldn't hurt for them to go out and get a very talented center as well. So all of that to be said, Hartenstein is a little bit of an unknown. There is some speculation as to what is the future of Julius Randle with this Knicks team. I think they're going to stick with him and just try and run it forward with this season. Julius Randle, I'll have to double check here, but I think he has 1 season left on his contract, and I could very easily just see them playing it out with him. I know he's not everybody's favorite player, but yeah, so he has this final year guaranteed, and then a player option in 2025-26, which will be $31 million. So I would probably expect him to decline that and try and get something more long-term for himself. But I think the Knicks probably just stick it out with Randle this year, at least through the first half of the season. I am of the belief that the Knicks were not better just minus Julius Randle. Now, if they were to go out and use him to make some other type of a move, then I could say that there might be players that fit what the Knicks are trying to do better than Julius Randle. But it's interesting in terms of, he's somebody who can go get you a bucket. And Jalen Brunson was just backed into a corner of needing to create just about every single possession for the Knicks during their postseason run when they saw all of these injuries start to pile up for them. So I think that they stick it out with Randle and try and compete in the East. Now, I am not ready to put them above the Boston Celtics based off of this Bridges move, and I think that they have a team that is very well constructed to guard the wings of Boston, where Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, I think that a very big part of their postseason success this year was the fact that Jason Tatum attracted so much attention himself, the best defender on the other team, plus a lot of the time, especially when it came to the finals, he was driving almost 20 times per game, so he was getting other defenders to crash, and it was opening up other opportunities for Jaylen Brown, who the majority of the time faced the second best defender. But that's not necessarily going to be quite as something that's quite as exposable as when you play the Indiana Pacers, and I don't even know who your second defensive stopper would be that was, covering Jaylen Brown off the top of my head. But the Knicks are going to be able to put OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges on the 2 J's, try and put them in jail one-on-one, and I think that series would be a dogfight. Now, Kristaps Porzingis, he's going to be out for the first 6 to 10 weeks of the season. At the end of the day, I'm still taking the Celtics over the Knicks, but they definitely closed the gap, and I did like the move for them, at least in the short term. They're going to be, one of the top 3 contenders, I would say, in the Eastern Conference. They probably just passed Milwaukee, in my opinion, if they weren't already there, in terms of the biggest threat to the Celtics in the Eastern Conference. But let me know how you feel about it. We do have a comment. When it comes to international prospects that's available at the guard position, who do you think fits Miami the best? I mean, if you're talking about players that are still remaining in the draft, I think you're probably running low, as we saw the French Revolution essentially take place in the first round. I mean, Tijan Salon probably would have been actually a pretty interesting. I know he projects a little bit more as a forward, but if you look at the high motor on him and the work ethic, I feel like that actually could have been a very interesting fit for Miami, especially if his three-point shot does ever sort of fully pan out. I mean, you look at the prospects that are still available. Again, I mentioned Bobby Klintman. He's a little bit bigger in terms of guards. I don't I can't say I know all too much about Juan Nunez, who is really the only international guard I'm seeing left in the draft class available, at least at the top of the second round. But yeah, I don't know. I think that it would have been interesting if they had gotten Salon or something. Topic is somebody, of course, as well that seemed like almost maybe just the similarities to Goran Dragic in the name was just like something that I had connected. But overall, I think the Heat are probably in a position where I don't know if they do kind of need a guard at the same time. I think that Terry Rozier is going to have a bigger role with the Heat. Last year was, of course, dealing with that neck injury throughout the end of the season, and it took him a little bit after the trade deadline to fully acclimate to playing in Miami, but I thought he was getting better as the year went on before the injury struck. So I think that the Heat are going to be in a pretty decent position next year, and they just bring in Bam Adebayo on a new contract extension. You go out, you get Kel'el Ware, who can provide some versatility for you at the big man position for them. So I think that they are in a pretty good spot, all things considered. But we are going to be moving on from some NBA talk here and diving into NFL, where, sticking with the idea of Miami, we have the Dolphins, who are in a contract negotiation with quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, and things have not been going all too great for them early on in this negotiation. So we are going to be diving into all of that next, but stick with us. We will be right back after this quick break.